We're going to finish the sixth chapter of Sotah. We've said that the question that we're examining with the Sotah is a question of uncertainty. If we are certain that she's been defiled, then there's no need to drink. And there's no question of uncertainty. And we said that we would accept the testimony of one witness to that effect. Even a witness who's possibly unreliable, like, a woman who's related to the wife in question. But what if there are two witnesses whose testimony contradicts? Whose two witnesses whose testimony contradicts? And this is going to be the closing Mishnah of the sixth chapter. And with it, we're going to finish, in fact, all of the material related to the Sotah itself, and we'll change subject. But let's look at this Mishnah. Eid echad omer nitamat. One witness says she was defiled. Ve'eid omer lo nitamat. And another witness says she was not. These are what male witnesses. Okay, what if when we've said we're going to accept a testimony from a woman in this case, which is it's not universal in the way Jewish courts used to work, but we're going to accept evidence from a woman. So the Mishnah goes on to say, Isha omeret nitamat, ve'isha omeret lo nitamat. Maybe one woman says she was defiled, and another woman says she was not defiled. What's the halacha? Well, we have a case of uncertainty here, and the purpose of the ceremony of the waters, is to resolve the uncertainty. So we're not surprised when the Mishnah rules, Hayta Sotah, she would drink. In the case of one against one, we still have uncertainty. So she's going to drink. What if one says she was defiled and two say that she was not? So the evidence is that she's not defiled. But, of course, remember that the Mishnah knows that there have been two witnesses that she's been warned not to seclude herself with a certain man, and two witnesses that she did seclude herself. So in other words, there are grounds for making her drink the bitter waters. The Mishnah knows this. So let's just keep that in mind. Ed omer nitamat. One witness says she was defiled. Ushnaim omrim lo nitamat. One says she was defiled and two say she was not defiled. Hayta Sotah, she would drink. Because the overwhelming evidence from the witnesses is that she's not defiled. In other words, the state of uncertainty still exists. And she's going to drink. Kaufman actually has a different text. We'll come back to Kaufman in a sec. But let's just round this out and let's take the third case. Shnaim omrim nitamat. Two say that she was defiled. Ve'ed echad omer lo nitamat. And one say she was not. In other words, two witnesses come to say she was defiled. Lo hayta Sotah. She wouldn't drink. Why doesn't she drink? Because we no longer have uncertainty. The purpose of the drinking ceremony is to resolve uncertainty. If two witnesses arrived to say she was defiled, she would not drink. She can't drink. She's divorced. She has to be divorced. Interestingly, Kaufman adds an extra lo in the second case. So where one witness says she was defiled and two say she was not defiled, we can see intuitively the halakha is going to be that she will drink because the uncertainty remains. Of course she's going to drink. And by the way, that's what all the printed texts say, that she will drink. Interestingly, Kaufman adds the word lo hayta Sotah. I think the law is probably copied from two lines below. So there's a law in the second case, in a law, in the third case, in Kaufman. And Kaufman, I think, has probably copied it down incorrectly. And we said before that Kaufman could sometimes be incorrect, but I think this is a clear case of Kaufman, the scribe in Kaufman, making a mistake. And by the way, it's very common when copying manuscripts for a scribe's eye to slip up and down from one line to the other. So it's very common. It's called a haplography for a word in one place in a manuscript to get copied into another place in a manuscript when the document's copied. So this looks like a haplography in Kaufman from 2 lines below. Let's keep going because we're going to change subject. That is the end actually of the Mishnah of Sotah. So we're ending on the question of uncertainty, but we're going to then go into other questions of language. Of course, we've talked a lot about language so far. We're now going to focus on the question of language, and that will allow us, the Mishnah will use that as a jumping off point to explore 2 other areas. One area is the whole question of the laws of war, and the other area is the question of the Egla Arufah, the heifer whose neck is broken if someone mysteriously dies in the desert. So, and by the way, it's possible that these following chapters that discuss these issues were originally not part of the Mishnah of Sotah. It's possible that they were tacked on. Let's have a look, and we'll see how they could have been tagged on so easily. Elu nemarim bilshonam. These are recited in their language. And this means, by the way, the language of the speaker. So this could be anybody's language. These can be recited in anybody's language. Elu nemarim bilshonam. Parashat Sotah, the section of the Sotah. So now this means that the section of the Sotah could be recited not in Hebrew. But let's keep going. Vidui Maaser, the confession of Maaser, the declaration you make when you bring Maaser. Ukriyat Shema, reading Shema. We can say Shema in any language. Utfilah, the tefillah, the amida. We can say the amida in any language. Uvir katamazon, and grace after meals. Ushvata edut, the oath of testimony. If we can sometimes force a party to come to the Beit Din and swear an oath that he didn't see something, that he doesn't have anything to say. And that oath is recited in any language because it's critical in a case of civil law that he actually understands what he's swearing. So it can be recited in any language. Ushvota pikadon, and the oath of a deposit. If I give someone something to keep, and then he says, oh, no, I don't have anything, or you didn't give it to me, I can force him to come to the Beit Din and swear that I didn't give him anything. And this also can be recited in any language. So all of these recitals, they connect right up to the individual. They can be recited in any language. It's very interesting. They include Kriyat Shema and Tefillah. They include the Shema and the Amida. And they're contrasted in the Mishnah with some recitations which have to be in Hebrew. Ve'elu nemarim b'lashon hakodesh. These have to be in the holy language, in Hebrew. Most of these, by the way, are specified in Torah. Most of these are mandatory recitations in Torah, and they're public recitations. So the common theme of this list is that they're both mandatory and public. Kriyat Shema is mandatory, but it's private. Shemona Esrei, interesting question among the sages as to whether it's mandatory or not. The text is certainly not mandatory. So let's have a look. These are recited in the holy language. Mikra bikurim. This is Arami Oved Avi. When you go to the Beit Mikdash, with your first fruits, you recite Arami Oved Avi. My father was a wandering Aramean, and the following three verses, they're the centerpiece of the drush of the Seder. We have to say them in Hebrew. Mikra Bikurim, v'chalitza, the chalitza declaration. If a woman doesn't want to be married to her brother-in-law. Brachot uklalot, the blessings and the curses. We're going to read these in this week's Parsha, B'chukosai, but I think the Mishnah here might be referring the Mishnah is thinking about the brachot and the klalot in the Parsha of Kitavo in Devarim, and when the people go into the land of Israel, the Kohanim recite the brachot and the klalot on Har Gerizim and Har Eval, the blessings and the curses. Uvirkot Kohen Gadol, the blessing of the high priest. This is over the people on Yom Kippur. Ufarshat HaMelech, this is the section of the king. Ufarshat, this is the section of that the king reads at Hakel. The king is going to read out of Sefer Devarim at Hakel, and he's going to read this in Hebrew. Ufarshat Egla Arufa, the parsha of the heifer whose neck is broken. Umashua hamilchama b'sha'a shehu medaber el ha'am, and the section of the priest anointed for war. When the people go out to war, a priest, originally Pinchas, in the time of Moshe, it was Pinchas. The priest is appointed, is anointed to go out with the people, and he makes a special recitation to the soldiers before they go out into battle. And this also has to be recited in Hebrew.